What's up, everybody? It is Peaceful here, back with another video for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the new card, Miss Marvel. I wanted to go ahead and give you my thoughts on the card, as it is the season pass card, and it's going to be one that a lot of people are probably picking up. And just go ahead and go over some decks that I think she will fit into quite well. Before we go any further, the obligatory, please, if you have not already and you enjoy my content, hit that subscribe button. Like the video, comment down below what other decks you think she's going to star in. All this really just helps me out. I hate having to do this every video, but it works. It's something that really impacts my numbers and has helped me out a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then you can skip through this part on the next video. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the new card. This is Miss Marvel. She is a 4 cost, 5 power, and she has the ongoing ability adjacent locations where your cards have unique cost have +5 power. So I've seen so much I've seen so much hate towards this card as compared to the last couple cards. We got people saying this card is not going to be good, people saying this card is, just too hard to make work, too easy to counter, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is a little bit of bias factored into what the last two season pass cards were, which were Loki and Elsa, which I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Miss Marvel's better than those cards because she's not. But those cards obviously came out way overtuned and caused a lot of problems in the metagame, and in the case of Loki, are still kind of causing problems in the metagame. So I don't think it's fair to judge Miss Marvel against those cards. I actually think what you really want to look at is comparing Miss Marvel to other cards similar to her cost. So if you look at something like Claw, Claw is a 5 cost, 4 power that has a similar kind of ongoing, but in my opinion, a even more restrictive one. It costs one more, has one less power naturally, and then only adds 6 power, and it has to be to a location to the right. Whereas this is a 4 cost, 5 power, and you can, to maximize it, you do need to kind of play it in the middle lane. But honestly, it's still fine as a 4/10, right? Like people play Sentry as a 4/10 in order to get a 4 cost 10 power. People play things like Typhoid Mary to get a 4/10. And obviously this is spread across 2 lanes, but to me that's just even better because it makes your plays more flexible and harder to predict over the next couple turns, as well as just being a pretty decent card in its own right. This card is extremely underrated in my opinion, being a 4/15 potentially, but also just being a 4/10 a lot of times is totally fine. It means this card is just really, really, really strong. You look at cards like, um, Blue Marvel. A lot of times you play a Blue Marvel, that's 5 cost, and then it'll buff, 6, 7 other cards, and it's like a 9, 10 power. This card is arguably better than that. And you'll see here in a minute that there's a certain deck that you probably already know which one it is that I swapped Blue Marvel out for this card. So I think this is a great card. No, it is not Loki and Elsa levels of busted, but if you are somebody who spends a little bit of money on Marvel Snap, I think the $10 for the season pass is definitely going to be worth it for you this month, given this card is going to be pretty decent and make a lot of archetypes better, and it is going to be the Peach Momoko month, so you're getting a lot of sweet variants to go along with it. Now, let's go ahead and get into some deck lists that I think you should be running or that you should be trying out once this card releases. First up, I wouldn't be doing, an honest service if I didn't tell you that I think Miss Marvel is going to fit right into what Thanos is trying to do. I've seen a lot of people give me pushback on this, and I understand why. You have the stones, and the stones can be awkward with Miss Marvel because if you have 2 stones in a lane, you're not going to get the Miss Marvel buff in that lane. But to me, this is pretty easy to play around. You set up the lanes in a way that maybe you're playing towards the middle lane to start. That's generally what I do anyway, because I like to get that free equity on the middle location if it ends up being one that you can't play 1 cost or stuff like that too. Um, but it also just, it's okay if this is just a 4/10, right? That's people were already playing Claw for a similar effect. Being able to put this beside the lane you're going to Professor X is very strong, and it makes it easier to play Professor X when you don't hit that ramp early. So just incredibly powerful card. What I really like about it is a lot of times you Professor X a lane and then you need to claw it, but that's the only thing you get to do on turn 5. So you go turn 4, ramp out Professor X, they correctly predict, think they've got you. You have to play the claw down either on turn 5 or 6. This just lets you play more beside it, along with the claw. Yes, it's one less buff into the Professor X lane, but it's still just very good. You'll see this is a little bit more low to the ground curve for this deck, and I did that on purpose because you just want a more variety in the cost of cards you have. It's possible that Nico doesn't fit in this version just because she is another 1 cost, but I thought the power that she offers was worth running her because a lot of times she's your extra mind stone or wherever it may be if you can hit the two draw two effect. So I went ahead and ran her. This is probably not the perfect list for this deck, but I wanted to run it anyway, see how it worked. I think that you could also run something similar to the Spectrum deck I posted a couple weeks back if you wanted to try Miss Marvel out because she obviously slots very well into that one, and that one runs even more of a variety of curve of numbered cards on your curve, so it's going to slot into there nicely as well. Next up, I have a lockdown style Miss Marvel deck, and this is something I'm very interested to try. You'll notice again, I have Cosmo here. I don't think you should really be running Miss Marvel without Cosmo to start the season. If you haven't figured this out yet, people love trolling. People love running decks that directly counter the season pass card for the first few days, just to make sure people can't have the maximum amount of fun. It hasn't been as big of an issue the last couple months because there wasn't as obvious of a counter, but when there's an opportunity like there will be this month for people to run things like Rogue and Enchantress, you're going to want Cosmo. So I have Cosmo slotted in this deck. Obviously, Echo is not stopped by this, so that is going to be a bummer, but you just got to sort of watch out for that anytime you're running a Miss Marvel deck because people are going to try and snipe you with that. But I think this is going to be a super solid deck to run for the first few weeks. This might be something the one I try to get Infinite with tomorrow or today when you'll be watching this video. But I think this is a very solid list. I think there's a lot of power in this deck. You've got your Professor X draws, you've got your Storm draws, you've got Miss Marvel to make those lanes stronger, you've got Doctor Doom to go even more over the top. It's just going to be really hard for your opponent to win the Storm and Professor X lanes when you've got this much power and utility to get into those lanes behind it. This will be a really interesting experiment to see if we can bring Lockdown back into the meta. I know right now the go-to Lockdown list is one more similar to the Thanos deck we just looked at, but I do think that Miss Marvel adds enough power because a lot of the time those lanes aren't going to have a lot of different costed or a lot of same costed cards because you kind of curve out and then that lane shut down. So something like Storm into Iron Lad into Miss Marvel mid or whatever it may be into Doctor Doom is just going to be kind of game over a lot of times for those decks. And I'm excited to see how this one plays out. I definitely am going to be giving this one a try myself, and I think y'all should too if you enjoy this style of play. Last up, this is definitely my favorite one. And this is a little bit of a spicy brew. I'm not even going to lie to you, but I wanted to try making a Spectrum ongoing list work. And you'll notice some really weird card choices in this. And I actually put a lot of thought into this. And I'm not sure that this is the exact list that I should be running, but it feels pretty good, looks pretty good. And the only card I really wanted to find a place to fit that I couldn't figure out what to take out was Iron Lad because just hitting any of these with Iron Lad is really, really strong. But I think this is going to be actually a pretty solid deck. You see, you've got a really nice curve, but also a really nice mix of costs. So we got two 1-drops, three 2-drops, three 3-drops, a 4, 2 5s, and a 6. You're going to very likely be able to curve out with the different costed cards. The only one I don't have multiples of is 4, and that's because I kind of figured with Miss Marvel, a lot of times you can go, Miss Marvel on 4, and then if you don't have Professor X, then you're playing like a 3 and a 2 on the opposite lanes, making sure you get that value on Miss Marvel. Keep in mind something I actually just realized I didn't mention when I was talking about the card is there has to be at least one card in the lane to get the +5 power buffs. You will not buff those lanes if they're empty. So make sure you are playing at least something into those lanes. That's why this deck is constructed the way it is. I did kind of want to explain a couple of the cards. Jean Grey, I think, is going to be super important for Miss Marvel decks because it just prevents them from playing things into the other lanes or forces them to play into a certain lane that you're not trying to win. And Miss Marvel is just really good behind Jean Grey. You go Jean Grey into Miss Marvel, and they're forced to play into the lane while you're buffing up the lanes beside it. It's just going to be a super strong, really hard to deal with line that is going to give this deck a lot of power and flexibility to beat a lot of different types of decks. The nice thing about Jean Grey is if you're playing against something like Destroy or Discard, you force them into a certain lane, you play a Cosmo there, you play an Armor there, and suddenly their game plan is severely hampered by what you have going on. And then you just can slam Sandman as the final card into that lane. Then they're locked into playing one card. If they haven't filled up that one lane yet, you know exactly where it's going to go. And then you get the Slam Spectrum. So I know Sandman looks a little weird, but I think with the 4 power buff and the flexibility that Spectrum offers you to put power into multiple lanes with a single card, it just was too good not to play. And it's possible there should be another 6-drop in this deck. I consider Destroyer because that's the classic combo when you have Armor and Cosmo in your deck is just playing a Destroyer to win the solo lane. especially when you get the 5-power Miss Marvel buff into another lane. It makes it that much easier to do so. You put the Miss Marvel behind an armor, you just the Slam Destroyer, and suddenly that's a 20-power lane. And it makes it really hard for them to contest that. It's a really strong line. So that is something you could consider. I'm not sure what I would cut. Probably one of the ones, but then I don't love that because of the Miss Marvel in particular. But we can make it work for sure. I definitely recommend trying this deck out. It looks super fun. It's probably the first deck I'm going to try out, though I do feel like it's probably not the best one that I'm showing you here. But, Marvel Snap is a game, and sometimes it's just about having fun. And I think this deck is going to be super sweet and super enjoyable to play with. So give it a try. If you don't have things, something like Howard, I know Howard's a card a lot of people don't have. Don't worry about it. Sub something else in. Another 2-drop will probably work just fine. The Mobius change that's coming through would work just fine as well once that goes into effect on Thursday. So be thinking about that. And let me know in the comments if there's another card that you would like to know a sub for. I definitely can help you out with that. But this is probably my favorite list that I've got here. I definitely am looking forward to trying it out. That's all I had for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments which deck you are most excited to try. I think they all look super sweet. I think Miss Marvel is actually super underrated at the moment. I think she's going to be a very powerful card. Not meta defining like Loki and Elsa were, but a card that finds a home in a lot of different decks and honestly potentially could end up getting nerfed at some point because 15 power for 4 is just very strong and requires people to play with a lot of very specific tech cards in order to counteract it. So definitely looking forward to trying this out. Let me know what you think, and I will catch you next time. Thank you so much.